So let's begin. Hello again. Nice to be with you today.
Nice to be here.
Away Ailleurs in French has been released in theaters Wednesday during a difficult time. We all know that cinemas is not the best time, of course, but it's still something. I mean, we already talked about that, but could you imagine when you made your film, a long time ago now, that suddenly your film will be in all the theaters and on Amazon Prime, and having this at least theatrical success?
No, not really. I thought that maybe it would be in some festivals, but that also wasn't a guarantee. But I thought that this wasn't really like these kind of films don't really get distributed that much, so that wasn't really my hope. So I'm really happy that people get to see it, and especially on the big screen. I think this film kind of works much better on the big screen than a small one.
Do you think it's changed your life a little bit? Because I remember meeting you in Zagreb, like 1 year and a half when that was a world premiere of the film, and I saw you as a little bit shy, like the guy in a way, like the character in a way. And I thought suddenly that you did a lot of interviews. Everybody's talking about you. Did something strange for you suddenly?
Yeah, I guess last year was really crazy for me. I went to about 20 festivals, also in the beginning of this year, but it was very hectic, and I wasn't really used to that. So I was working alone on this film, so it was a big shock for me to meet so many people and get all this attention. And to be honest, it's not really like my favorite part. It was kind of exhausting. Like, I enjoyed all the traveling and everything, but it was a bit too much for me. But yeah, probably now looking back at it, my memory is much better than now. I only remember the good parts, but I remember being really exhausted. Yeah, it's nice to be kind of now, like the whole virus situation came at the right time for me. Like I got to experience all the festivals and everything, and now I'm finally back home and I can work. And I was really looking forward to working. I enjoy working and animating. So this is really nice for me.
So yeah, festival is good, but it's good to work and finally make film again.
Yeah.
Marie-Pauline, about the film, maybe, I don't know.
Yes, about the film. Well, the first question I had is how could you decide to make a feature film on your own?
It wasn't really like a big decision for me. So when I began, I was 21 and I didn't have much experience, and I didn't have opportunities to get a big budget really to work with the bigger team, and I figured that this is the only way I could make it at that time, and I wanted to kind of learn everything before working with a bigger team. And I guess this was the best way I figured I could learn all these things. And so I was also just used to working like that on the short films. And so it wasn't really any different for me. It was like the same as making those shorts. And it was also for the funding, I funded this film as 4 short films. And so I figured it would be difficult for me to, without any producer or any really experience making features, to just start making one. So I funded them each of the 4 chapters in the film. I funded them separately, and I guess I figured out when I began, I figured out like which things would be easier to animate, and so I kind of made a story around these things that wouldn't be too difficult, or and so that's why he's like on this island alone, and so there's not much to animate, and like riding a motorcycle is pretty simple to animate. I can just like make one loop of animation. I can repeat it many times and like just move the camera around and like get all these different shots, and it's very simple. And yeah, so I tried to embrace these limitations and kind of like maybe come up with something more original because of these limitations, because I think maybe if I had more resources, maybe I would be tempted to make something more traditional, I guess.
It's interesting when we look at your short film. It tends that you have not an opposition, but it's really some of them are in the city and some of them are in the nature. And I don't know if it's an opposition, but I don't know if it's your life is like that. I don't know if you live in a city, but you like to go in the forest and everything. But when we look at Followers and Rush, it's in the cities. But then the other one are in the forest. I was wondering about what you think about that. The city and the nature.
Yeah, I guess I live on the edge of a city, so I get to experience both of these, and I guess I prefer going outdoors, and I try to like even when making away, I was usually sitting outside, at least in the summertime, because I could just use my laptop and I could look at the forest, and yeah, but. Now I'm kind of making these films mostly set in nature because I just feel more comfortable like making these landscapes that feel more organic, and that I guess I can like experiment more, or kind of I don't have to like try to replicate any city. I can just come up with my own thing, and I just enjoy kind of these organic things more and more.
And even with the animals, that's something really important for you in your films.
Yeah, and yeah, the reason why I have all these animals in a way is because I also knew that there wouldn't be any dialogue, so I kind of wanted that to make sense. So the main character doesn't really have anyone to talk to, and he also feels kind of more alone because there's no other persons there. So yeah, that's why all the animals, and my next film is also just animals.
Marie-Pauline?
Yes, I wanted to talk about the influence or inspiration of video games. Everybody talks about video games, about your movie, and I wanted to know how you feel about it. Is it a real source of inspiration, or?
Yeah, I guess there is an inspiration, definitely. Like mostly from kind of more indie games, where I guess some of them are called walking simulators, where you're just walking around in this environment and you don't really shoot at anything, or there's not really any goal per se, but you're just exploring, and so the stories are kind of told through these environments, and you kind of get to be like a detective in this environment and look for clues, and kind of there's all this history you can find, and yeah, so like from games like that, and I guess also from the aesthetic sense there's some influence, because it was all made in 3D like a way, but I wanted to have a really simple kind of graphic style, and I guess this kind of looks very similar to a video game because it's very simple, and I don't have any textures even, or any lights on the characters, and yeah, but well, I guess it's obvious that there is an influence with video games, but it's not just video games. There are many things that kind of I like, and from live action films, and like from books, and just my own experiences traveling, and like being kind of alone in this, like in these strange landscapes, and so I kind of like to combine all these, and I like to combine the 3D animation where I can kind of move freely, and I can move the camera, and I can kind of strangely enough, I feel like in 3D I can explore more than other techniques, because I can just start animating and then kind of figure out the camera, and I can figure out everything later, so it feels more spontaneous, and I like that element from 3D. But I also like some elements from 2D hand-drawn animation, like the graphic look and kind of not having too many details, and also from live action films, like the camera in my films is usually not very perfect. It's sometimes shaking, and sometimes it's a bit delayed. So like it feels, hopefully it feels like there's someone actually operating the camera. So I like to have these imperfections too.
If we told you somebody like, maybe it's a huge name like that, but Tarkovsky, Andrei Tarkovsky, for example, people like that, that like to be in a place like Stalker, of course. Is it something that you are, I don't know if it's an influence, but something that you like?
I guess I like his films, but I wouldn't say they were a big influence on me. But some films that had an influence were definitely Alfonso Cuarón's films, all of them, and there was Duel, the Steven Spielberg film, which is like this big chase, very very simple story, and also another chase film called It Follows, which is a more recent, it's more of a horror film, but also a very simple premise, and but I guess from that the influence is that the monster in that film is kind of very slow, and you kind of feel the tension more because of the slowness, I guess. I'm not really a big fan of these jump scares, and I prefer kind of like more of suspense. It's kind of like the tension is more stretched, and you can feel it more. Although, like, I wouldn't like. I don't think Away really is there's nothing really scary. Like I guess it's safe to see if you're not a fan of horror. But yeah, other films were like General, the Buster Keaton film, and games you mentioned, like Journey and Shadow of Colossus and Last Guardian, and other films were, I guess, Motorcycle Diaries, because of the subject. Now I'm kind of forgetting some. I'm a big fan also of Haruki Murakami's books, so I guess the surreal aspect comes from that.
I was talking about Tarkovsky, not just to say a big name, just because Tarkovsky always said in interviews, sometimes he said, a lot of people think, and he was playing on that, but my film are intellectual, and plays only for the adults. And he was saying, I think the children understand more my film than the adults. And the thing is, sometimes just to look in a film, and I remember seeing Stalker and just being, or Solaris, and just being with them without understanding really what's going on, but just looking around, the places. And that's why it was not the huge intellectual thing, but more the contemplative way.
I guess I've heard from some parents who are kind of afraid that their kids wouldn't understand Away, but usually that's not an issue. I guess the adults are usually it's more difficult for them than the kids to understand it. I guess I didn't really think about it. I just made the film for myself, and
Yes, of course.
I didn't really think about if it's for kids or if it's like for any audience. I just made it for myself.
No. I was just. It was, of course, not about the target. It was much more about
Yeah.
Tarkovsky is always like this big thing, and I was like, just no, it could be. It's a simple film. That's why I think I like also Away a lot. It's like we were talking with Marie-Pauline just before talking to you, and was like, we've seen the film more than once, and every time it seems like we discover something else, or maybe we forgot something from the last viewing, and suddenly say, "Oh yes, I remember that." It was like a new film, like sometimes a video game, new film every time you look at it.
Yeah. I guess maybe there's not like that many like. It's not like a puzzle you can kind of solve, but I guess what you see from different viewings is, I guess, your own experiences maybe influence the viewing, and maybe if you're in this kind of mode, you'll feel different watching Away, because there's a lot of like space left for interpretation. So
Marie-Pauline.
Yes, you were talking about the monster, the creature in the movie, and you were, as you said, is very slow, but is also very calm and very patient. He waits for a very long time to find his prey, and I thought it was really interesting to have that kind of monster that's not is not bad, is not angry, is just he wants something and is ready to wait for a very long time to have it.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, I didn't want him to be evil, and I don't even call him a monster. It's more of maybe a spirit or kind of this force of nature, like that hasn't really that spirit doesn't really have any opinions, or he's not like trying to be evil. He's just like maybe like in nature, it's just overtaking things, and he's also kind of like maybe more of a reflection of the main character's kind of state of mind, actually. So he's kind of as the boy kind of grows more like scared, and he's more depressed, then the monster grows in size. And once he gets like the boy gets more confident and kind of feels stronger, you can see this monster kind of shrinking also. It's not very obvious, but it's a little bit there. And also kind of didn't like the monster doesn't have any emotions in his face, really. It's just it doesn't really have a face, so it's just more about the body movement and just the I guess.
We can talk also about the real pleasure, the aesthetic pleasure that you have. I mean, when you begin the film, like you said, was the beginning, and it's small things, but more you go into the film and more you try to have a lot of colors and shapes, and we have some beautiful forest. It's sunny at one point, raining, snowing. We understand that you really love to show, like we said, nature and all these things.
Yeah, I guess because there is no dialogue really, and even the characters don't really emote that much. Like the character animation isn't really, I guess, very obvious. Like it doesn't really show exactly what the character feels. So I kind of have to use other elements and use music and use editing, and of course also the environments. So I guess the environments are kind of reflecting what he's feeling. So I kind of figure out I guess the locations and everything based on how the character would feel at that moment. And so at one point we see the map of the island, and the character is looking at where he's going to go. And actually, that was one of the last things I made, only when the story was kind of figured out, and I knew, and I designed everything, and I knew where he's going. So I kind of made it after making all the environments.
Did you do the film also with your emotion at one point and saying, well, I feel really good now, so it will be sunny in the film. Oh, well, no, I feel a little bit depressed, so it's going to be snowy or something like that?
Well, because it's so slow, it wouldn't really work, because usually I'm not really like depressed for half a year or something. It takes to like make that scene, or I'm not really happy for half a year. So I had to kind of work around that. But it does impact me if I worked on that snowstorm, and that wasn't like the most pleasant thing to work on. I kind of feel like it kind of impacted me.
Alexis was talking about the music. You made the music yourself, so how did you work on the music, and was it very helpful to be both the director and the composer, so you knew exactly what you wanted and at what point you wanted music?
And especially, sorry, because for the short film you had a composer, so I mean you had somebody to work with you, so how was the change with that?
Yeah, it was exactly like that. It was very helpful to be a director and also a composer, because music is something that's very difficult to articulate in words, what you want, and I guess composers don't really want the directors to be like micromanaging everything and telling you the tempo and telling you like which key to use. So it's difficult to explain things, but of course it works in many cases. Like most of the great scores, of course, were not made by the directors of the films, but in my case, I had worked with a composer before on the short films, and he even made a score for the first chapter of Away, but I figured that it didn't really fit what I wanted, and he was also kind of busy, and our scheduling didn't really work. So I decided to give a try on making the music myself. But of course, I didn't have any experience in this at all. I don't play any instruments even still now, and I can't read any sheet music, or so I don't know anything. So I started just by opening this software on the computer, and it was just so overwhelming because there are so many buttons you can press, and like it's very complicated. And I almost gave up, but then I just opened a very simple app on the phone, and it's made so simple that basically anyone can use it. It's like made for kids. And I kind of learned the basics there because, it's very like you don't have to think about technical things. You can just be creative. And some of the tracks in the film are actually made in that phone app. I think one or two are even not edited at all. I just exported directly from the phone. But others I would export on the computer, and I can just add more professional instruments on the notes I wrote on the phone. But once I kind of gained the confidence and I learned the basics, I started using the more professional software. But all the music is written basically without playing. It's like you can just draw the notes in the software, and I don't know what I'm doing. I just play around and see if it sounds good, and kind of it's very intuitive. So when I work, I'm not really thinking about specific scenes where I would fit it like this. I'm not thinking about like making this character's theme, or I'm not trying to like hit any like specific moments in the film. So usually in the traditionally the scores are very much like I guess repeating what's on screen, and I didn't really even want that. I wanted kind of the music to be guiding the tempo of the editing. So so I made the music while I had begun animation, but it wasn't really like settled, so I could still move things around. And I guess the tempo of the music did influence the story even. Maybe I came up with a piece of music, and that gave me ideas for where the story might go. And yeah, I guess I wanted the music to be very simple and very minimalistic. It's just like all other elements in the film. It's I use very simple patterns, just like the visuals are usually just very simple patterns, and I just layer them on top of each other. And I guess I find the nuance not in the melody, but more in the way it's arranged, and more in the sounds I use. And yeah, and the music kind of goes on for a long time, and it doesn't really change that much. Like sometimes in like these more mainstream animated films, the music is kind of changing every 10 seconds, and it maybe starts very fast and then quickly changes into something like very sad, and then it's funny, and it kind of doesn't have time to kind of really, you don't have time to feel the music. So I wanted the music to kind of keep going for like 3 or 4 minutes, and it's just maybe one emotion that you feel for 3 or 4 minutes, and that means you get to really experience it, and you kind of, yeah, you're focusing on one emotion, and that way I think it feels much stronger.
Your film is also about, I don't know if it's about that actually. Is it about life and death and the circle of nature and living without not asking too much question, maybe we always try to find a meaning of life, but suddenly it's more easy than we all thought. What do you think?
For me, I guess the story is a bit more personal than something as big as life and death. It's more about this personal journey for the main character, who's kind of, I guess, lost and alone. In the film, he's kind of literally lost and alone, but it's the same for like people living in a city or anywhere. You can feel like that, and he's kind of like trying to find this connection. I guess he's trying to find other people, and yeah, and the other animals also are also kind of sharing this same theme, where the bird, and he's the boy's companion, is also separated from other birds, and usually when we see other animals in the film, they're in a group. So we see a group of cats and a group of elephants, and yeah, so everyone has their own kind of group that they belong to, and yeah, the main character doesn't, and he's kind of finding that connection. And yeah, I've also kind of compared the theme of the story and the story itself to I guess the making of this film, like how I made it alone, and how it's very similar to the boy's journey of being alone and having this kind of great dark spirit chasing the boy. It felt kind of like making this big project. There's a lot of pressure, mostly from myself. Like there's pressure I'm putting on myself to make it, to finish the film and like make it good. And so yeah, I don't think in those big conceptual really ideas. And usually when I try to start like with a big idea, it doesn't work. So I usually just start with, I guess, the story and the core journey and the ideas and what it's about. Kind of like I discover all those things while making the film. So usually when I try having those ideas at first, they feel very forced, and I didn't really think about how it's similar to me making that film. I only realized that once it was kind of finished, and yeah, people pointed that out to me, and I was a bit surprised also.
But but maybe, and that's not that's to point out what I was saying. Actually, it's maybe because it's much more simple, and it's not so big conceptual, life and death, and it's quite simple. We think it's conceptual, and maybe because your film is simple, it made us think that, that's so, finally it's maybe so a little bit more simple than we think, all about life and death and everything. And maybe we should feel more like animals than, having all these big ideas.
Yeah, yeah. I don't really know what I could say about life and death. I haven't really figured it out yet. Maybe if I do, I can make a film about that. but it was just, it's, I think most of my favorite things are very personal to the filmmaker, and they're kind of, you can, even if I don't know the filmmaker, I can get the sense that the filmmaker is kind of sharing something that they would rather not. And maybe through this film, you can kind of feel that they're sharing something that's very difficult to share. And I guess those are my favorite films.
Marie-Pauline, do you have I have another question. Marie-Pauline, do you have another one?
Well, I had just one last question is, are you ready to do it again? To do a feature on your own, or maybe not on this time?
I am working on the next film, and basically right now, all the work I'm doing, it's just me, but the plan is to have a small team this time to help me, and my next film will be much bigger, I think, and more difficult to make, so I need other people to help me, and I think the film can be much better if I work with people who are smarter than me and can do all these things much better. But right now I'm just myself, and I've been actually doing that since I finished Away last January, so it's almost 2 years now. So it feels like I'm back at in the same situation right now, but I'm working with a co-writer and a producer, so it's a bit different, but my day-to-day hasn't really changed that much. It's just me on my computer, and if this doesn't work out, I think I can always go back and work on by myself, and so it feels good that I feel like I can explore more, and I can be more bold, because if things don't work out, I always have a chance to make another film, and I can. So I feel I can take more risks.
Is this feature film is kind of inspired by Aqua, your short film? Because it feels like it's almost the same.
Yeah, it is. Well, when I started, I just thought I would adapt it into a feature, but now it's evolved quite a lot. So the story is quite different, and the basic core idea is very similar. That it's a cat alone in an ocean, but in the feature version, there are a lot more characters, and it's not just about the cat overcoming his fears of water, but it's a lot more about these group of characters kind of arguing with each other, and they all have different personalities, and they all want different things, and so it's more about this kind of working together, and which I hope would also kind of reflect the making of that film, where I'm planning to work with other people, and I have some fears of kind of I've never really done that, working with that many people, and so the main character also is used to being very independent, and like most cats are, they don't really want other people to have company of other people, but he's kind of forced into this small boat with other animals.
I have just a last question. I talk about life, death, and everything. Do you have a lot of people actually coming to you after Away and having a lot of different approaches and analysis of film sometime, and you think, I didn't think about that at all, but they, talk a lot about different things?
Yeah, they do really, and especially now I've heard people comparing the story that it's a metaphor for now the COVID-19. So he's trying to escape from a virus, but of course I didn't think about that. And I've heard like people have some political comparisons, how they feel like it's their country's story and it's being oppressed by this other country or some very specific things. And so but for me, yeah, so that's why I hesitate to tell exactly like what this means or that means. So it's interesting to hear what other people say, but usually it's just the most common thing is that it's depression or for me it's more like this anxiety than depression. It's about yeah, so it's just all these negative things rolled into this one spirit.
Marie-Pauline, is it okay?
It's okay for me. Thank you a lot.
Well, yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Gints. It was really nice talking to you. And I don't know how do you have some word from France about the release of the film or thing like that? Or
Well, it just started, so
yeah.
I don't really know how it's going, but I received a lot of like press like articles and yeah, so it's quite a lot and it's crazy how much attention it's getting.
The reviews are really good and from really different style of newspaper. You know, you have Le Monde or Libération, famous newspaper, but you have also, you know, website, young people, magazines and everything. That's interesting because you really, you know, a lot of people, it's a little bit like I Lost My Body by Jérémy Clapin, you know. It's kind of this film that a lot of people love from different ages and different style. So that's
Yeah, that's like that's one thing I didn't think about this when I made the film, and that can also be more difficult if it's not focusing on one like audience. So I usually kind of fall between those. My films aren't like super mainstream, but they're also not like very experimental as some films in festivals are, and usually I'm in between those. And yeah, so I think it's something to enjoy for everyone, but usually sometimes people complain that it's too mainstream or it's too strange, and I don't know, like I fall somewhere in between.